coming here as green as grass. There were a whole lot of things that confused me. Among those things was, what's a college of technology when you've already got a college of engineering? How do those two things coexist, and what's the intersection between them? I quickly found out I wasn't the only one. There have been generations of people confused about that.
I got my one-on-one meeting with Mitch, and I described what it is I wanted to do, what we wanted to do in the college. A lot of this was just thoughts at this point. Monday morning, Janet says, the president would like to speak with you. And he was on the phone. And he said, Gary, I love what you're proposing here, okay? What can I do? What can we do to really start on this?
From Purdue University, this is Techies Today, the Purdue Polytechnic Podcast. Today, the first of a two-part interview with Gary Bertoline, Distinguished Professor and Dean of our college from 2011 through 2021. In part two, we'll discuss the growth of research in the college. To set the stage for that, let's first jump in a time machine and go back 13 years. We were the College of Technology, and Gary Bertoline had been a professor, department head, or associate dean for 21 years. But by the first time he met with Purdue's new president, Mitch Daniels, the college had endured 8 consecutive years of declining enrollment. And as Gary tells us, that meeting did not go well. What untapped potential did Gary see in the college? And how did he and his team create the plan to redefine and transform our college and sell it to the president, the provost, and the board of trustees, not to mention faculty, staff, and students? Here's Gary Bertoline.
I like challenges, first of all. And being in the college since 1990, I had a lot of experiences. And I saw the really good people that we had. I saw that we had really good programs that were very popular with business and industry. What I did not see is a good way of communicating what we do. There's a lot of confusion. There still is to a certain extent. Our discipline looks like engineering at times. It can look like computer science at times. It can look like management at times. And so we have to do a much better job in describing what it is we do and the value we bring and differentiate ourselves from those other disciplines. And that's the challenge that I saw. Even though it was a challenge, I thought it was a huge opportunity to do something very, very special. Purdue University is a very special place in general. We all know that. But one of the distinct features of Purdue that really makes it different from most other major research universities is that we had a college of technology that was really undervalued and misunderstood. And that's the challenge that I saw. I saw this as a blue ocean opportunity. If you read management, that's a common term. That if we did the right things, spectacular things could happen, not only for the college, but Purdue. This is a way of our college really contributing to the excellence that Purdue prides itself in. And I saw that as a great opportunity and challenge. And so I was blessed to be selected as the dean after going through the interview process.
Mm-hmm. So you saw that we were undervalued, but how soon did you know that the college needed a major transformation, changes to our curriculum, to our focus, even to a change in name to the Polytechnic? Can you take us through your thought process?
Yeah, so I started having a series of meetings with faculty. I actually had a small group that I met with on a regular basis. I started reading a lot about what was going on in higher ed in general, what the labor force needs were in the nation, what kind of directions technology was moving into. And so I started to become kind of a futurist, like what can this become if we do it right, and how can we be on the forefront of what is emerging? The college had always been very good at reacting to newer technologies and integrating that, but it was usually kind of when everyone else had been doing it, okay, or started doing it, okay? We tried to take it one step further. We tried to anticipate where some of the opportunities might become, and so part of it was a change in the way we thought about our role and how we actually begin offering new programs and look at different opportunities. So it took about a year to really gather my thoughts. And it wasn't just my thoughts. I want to be very clear. I had a lot of people give me a lot of input because they got excited too when I described that I think that we can do much better and be much better recognized for the value that we bring. And that started bringing out people that started thinking the same way because they saw that potential. And so it was shortly after Mitch Daniels was named as president that I had my first meeting with him, which didn't go very well, okay, in describing our college, okay, but 6 months later I made up for it. So anyways, it was a long road. It wasn't easy, it was challenging, but it was something I really believed in, and so that made it a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Mitch Daniels, so he became president of Purdue in January of 2013.
Yes.
So I remember very well, in October of 2014, so he'd been here for 18, 20 months, give or take, he came to our college for a meeting with all College of Technology faculty and staff. Mm-hmm. And in that meeting, President Daniels told us that he was excited about the transformation of our college. In fact, it became one of his administration's signature initiatives, which he called Purdue Moves.
Yes.
What struck me about that meeting and why it's so memorable to me is that he was very blunt.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Here's Mitch Daniels in 2014.
Coming here as green as grass and new to all this, just, where are we, 20 months ago, there were a whole lot of things that confused me. Among those things was, what's a college of technology when you've already got a college of engineering? And how do those two things coexist, and what's the intersection between them? I quickly found out I wasn't the only one. There have been generations of people confused about that or not 100% clear. Many of you came forward with what I consider a very intriguing new idea about a new pedagogy and a new direction and even a new identity for this college. I've become enormously excited about it, and it's not just me. The higher ed that succeeds and is still vibrant and successful and relevant 10 and 20 years from now will have to look somewhat different. I think this is the single best possibility Purdue has to meet that test and lead that change.
So you said your first meeting with President Daniels didn't go very well,
No.
but here he was 20 months later with great praise for the efforts. How did you and your team succeed in getting President Daniels to go from point A to point B?
Yeah, so first of all, that video brings chills to me because it was and there's a story behind why he did that. So let's back up to when he first was named president. It was December of 2012. He had already been named. He was going to start in January. He started meeting with deans. And my first meeting with him was not real good because he expressed it in there. It's like, what is a college of technology? Why do we need it? Because we already have a college of engineering. I don't understand your role. And he challenged me at that point, and I started expressing to him that what you don't understand and what a lot of people haven't understood is that this is kind of a diamond in the rough if you do the right things with it. It can actually differentiate Purdue from other universities in the nation. But, we aren't there yet, but I have some ideas. And so what happened was that when he became president, around March of 2013, Gina Del Santo, his chief of staff, set up meetings with all the deans to just talk about what's going on, what we're thinking about. And so in that 3-month interval, we started working very hard on what we were going to propose this college become. And so, I met with the leadership team. I met with faculty, as I said before. I met with our advisory board, a great advisory board, by the way. And students got a lot of input. I also had some of my own ideas. I'm not going to, I'm not going to say that I put my thumb on this very hard, okay? And that caused some problems, and I own that. But I had some very strong ideas, too, having been in the college for as long as I had been and some of the experiences I had. So I met with Gina, and the 30-minute meeting ended up being well over an hour because I could see her getting excited as I was talking about what we wanted to do. And she said, Mitch needs to hear this. And so, about 3 weeks later maybe, I got my one-on-one meeting with Mitch, and I only had 30 minutes with him. And I described what it is I wanted to do, what we wanted to do in the college. And he started getting excited about what we were talking about. And he said that, we only have 30 minutes. Do you have anything to share with me? And you have to understand, a lot of this was just thoughts at this point. And I did have a 2-page, okay? And it was really a rough draft. And I handed it to him and said, Mitch, there's a lot more detail, but here's a starting point. And he said, well, I'm traveling this weekend. I'll read it on the plane or something like that. And so Monday morning, I'm in the dean's office, okay, working as I normally do. And I don't know, it was around 8:30 in the morning. I'll never forget this. It was around 8:30 in the morning. Okay, Janet says, the president would like to speak with you. And he was on the phone. And it's like, okay. So I get on the phone, and he says, Gary, and there's a pause. And then, oh, God, I'm fired.
That would have been my first reaction.
Yeah, it's like, Gary, I read your paper and, reflected more about what we talked about. And then there's another pause. And he said, Gary, I love what you're proposing here, okay? What can I do? What can we do to really start on this? And it's like, oh, wow. And so that really started it. And so then we hurriedly got together and started putting ideas to paper, and we came up with a much stronger proposal. And so what happened is, I think it was June of 2013, it was the president's first retreat, okay, at the president's residence, right? And all the leadership were there, all the other deans, provost, associate provost, treasurer, you name it, okay? There must have been 50 people, okay, in that room. And, we did some general business in the morning, and then we were going to break for lunch, okay, and during lunch, there are going to be presentations, because he asked people around campus, if you have ideas you want to present, I want to hear them. Well, he had contacted me before, and he said, I definitely want you, okay, to present this idea. And so it was configured in a big square. I was sitting right directly across from him, but it was, maybe 30 feet away on the other side of the room, kind of on this big square with everyone around it. And he said, so let's get started. Grab your lunch. We'll come back and let's get started on the presentation. And he looked right at me. He said, Gary, I want you to go first. It's like, rats. I'd like to see how someone else is doing here first, right? And so I pitched this idea, all right, and this is how academia is. It's very competitive, and so, you're trying to read the audience, and, I could see some people nodding heads. Others were like, I think my idea is going to be better. I'm reading into this, what's going on with the body language. But it was well received in that meeting. I got some really good meetings. I got some pushback, and that's okay. That's the way we work in academia. But then, after that meeting, he said, I want you to present this idea, as well as some other ideas that were collected in that meeting, to the Board of Trustees. And he was going to present it. So I had to write up something. And he took it in front of the Board of Trustees, I think it was in July. And he called me again right after the meeting. he said, Gary, I want you to know that not everyone understands what you want to do, but they are really excited about it. It's like, well, that's good because I think we know what we want to do, and there'll become more clarification, as we get into it. But I really appreciate the confidence you and the board are showing in us, and so they put their full weight behind it, and then it just took off. I mean, we started working on budgets, and I wanted the double enrollment. I had all these ideas, and we had all these ideas, but that's really what it took. And so I love telling that story because it really is kind of the way things work when big ideas. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a process that you have to follow through, and there's different people you need to talk with, but. It was a very, very exciting time for us at that point, and when we got the go-ahead, and we really hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So enrollment had already started to recover from the decline. I've always considered our transformation to be complete with the renaming of the college, which was 2015 when we renamed to Purdue Polytechnic. But we'd already started to recover enrollment by that time. When were you completely sure that we were on the right track?
I guess that when the president and the board got behind it, I thought we had something. These are very, very bright people, okay? And I knew we were on the right track at that point. Now, I didn't know exactly how we'd finish this or execute on it. The devil's in the details, as they say. And I knew there was a lot of work, but I knew if we executed it well enough, we would be successful. So they gave me a lot of confidence. Their backing meant the world to me, and it continued. And all the provosts that I served under, were totally behind what we were doing. So I had tremendous support at Purdue. The advisory board, industry advisory board, were really excited about it too. And so I just had a lot of confidence very early on that we were on to something. We had a lot of work to do, but it was early for me. Now, it wasn't that way for the college. That's why the video that you showed a few minutes ago, why that happened, or one of the reasons why it happened is, I was meeting regularly with the president to give him updates, and he, as he always did, say, how can I help, Gary? And what we talked about is, I said, I think it would be great if you could get in front of our faculty and staff and talk to them. Just say whatever you think is necessary, but you and I believe in this, but not everyone in the college does. And that's the reason he came there. And that's why he said what he said. And to think of what he said, if you remember, one of his last statements was, this has the potential of being, one of the most significant things that Purdue can do. And it was like, the faculty are sitting there listening to the president. And of course, he had a year or so behind him, and so he was gaining confidence as well as the faculty in his leadership. And it was like, that was a home run. I mean, at that point then, people really started getting on board.
Sounds like it was a challenge to get there. A challenge to get there internally, I guess. Yeah. You've described how you got Mitch on board and the Board of Trustees on board and the provost came on board and other leaders around the university on board. But it took until that meeting before you think it kind of turned the tide with our own faculty and staff?
Yeah, it did. Now, I always talk about this. There's always early adopters in an organization. We had great early adopters, by the way. We had like 50 faculty that jumped on board right away. It was more than we needed, actually, and I had to and I really regret this. I wish I had been a better leader at the time, figured out how to get them all. But we got about 25 or so to really start experimenting. And so we ran some experiments. We did some things to kind of run out ahead a little bit, learn some stuff so we could then bring it back in at the department level. So anyways, we had early adopters, but we also had some challenge. I had faculty in faculty meetings stand up to me and say, this is not a good idea, this is going to fail, you're going to ruin the college. I heard all that, okay? But that happens, all right? So we had challenges, but we had early adopters, and that really got us started.
It doesn't bother me to hear, I suppose hindsight helps. We know where we've come from and where we've gotten to. It doesn't bother me to hear that there were people who were not sure of the idea. But I guess the point I wanted to make was, at the time of the transformation, the name change, we were already 2 years into reversing what had been an 8-year decline in enrollment. And it only took, I think, 2 years?
2 years.
To recover our lost enrollment. And now we're 7 years in a row of record high enrollment. So do you find that very validating for the whole transformation?
Yeah, obviously it does. I still take great pride in the fact that the college is well accepted. It's much better recognized, and it is doing so well. And a lot of that is because of our graduates. They're knocking it out of the park. They go out ready, and they're in very, very high demand. If you look at virtually every metric when it comes to undergraduate and graduate studies, we are much better than we were before. It actually started with a very simple request. I asked every department in the college to create new degree programs that were, relevant and future-looking, and name them in ways that will attract attention of students, parents, and industry, okay? And so that's when we started getting into robotics, and automation, all right? And we started adding these certain programs, and that's what started driving enrollment, okay? Because before we had, and we still do, we have these dry degrees, engineering technology, okay? Computer graphics, and again, what does that really mean? But it was kind of, again, the devil in the details. What's underneath that? And those new degree options and programs and minors and everything that we added 20 of them within a year's period of time. And I believe that is what really started the accelerating enrollment going forward. Okay.
Okay.
And it's still doing it, it's still happening.
Yeah,
and we are getting new programs too, right? So it continues.
And forward-looking programs. Manufacturing is
Yeah.
a big focus, and,
Yeah.
and that's huge in industry, and to have degrees named for that.
Yep.
And it's driving investment too. I'm thinking of the smart manufacturing ecosystem in Dudley and Lambertus Halls, these multi-million-dollar facilities that are unique in the country.
Yeah, and that one of my goals was that our college sees itself and our faculty and staff sees themselves as innovators, okay? And I actually cut out a piece of the budget every year. I don't remember how much it was. It was in a few $100,000, and I would invest that in great ideas. Not all of them panned out, but the Advanced Manufacturing Lab is an example of one that did, okay? And that was a great example of how investing. So it was like I was funding startups within the college, and that turned out to be very, very successful. And that led into our research too, by the way. It wasn't just undergraduate programs. Our goal was to improve everything, every metric you could think of. We actually started off by creating, by collecting data. We ended up with like a 75 or 80-page report that looked at every metric you can imagine on how you can measure, an entity. And we used that as our baseline. And that's what we used to improve. And so it wasn't just undergraduate studies. It wasn't just offering new programs. We wanted to get better in every measure that was important. And I think we made great progress in all those. And I think that's why the college has continued to sustain itself, because there's excellence everywhere, right? Right? Everything got better, right? And that is contagious.
Gary Bertoline, Distinguished Professor and former Dean. The College of Technology's transformation to Purdue Polytechnic became official in 2015. 2018 was the second consecutive year of record high enrollment. and the year we had fully reversed that earlier 8-year decline. Just recently, we received data for fall 2024, which indicates Purdue Polytechnic achieved its 8th year in a row of record high enrollment. Coming in part 2 of our conversation with Gary Bertoline, a new strategic focus on research in the college.